Welcome to the Attractions Group podcast. This is episode 113. Don, it's been a minute.
It has been sometime early mid-September was the last recording that we had. It was about Jogga Lake that I remember that we last did an episode.
You know, we were going strong. We obviously we have Tower Topics still, and that's remained alive. But I guess if anybody doesn't listen to Tower Topics, why don't you let them know kind of what went on with you and one of the reasons why this show kind of took a hiatus.
Well, as you mentioned with the Trash Group podcast, we were rolling every week. We had somebody on the show for the most part from another part in the industry, or maybe they worked for a manufacturer. They covered the industry as a reporter. So we were rolling, and we get toward the end of August, and I had what was described as a stroke that impaired my vision in my right eye. And I was spending every week in September, October, November, December, I was either having some kind of procedure done, laser surgery, eye surgery, temporal artery surgery. And in between surgeries, I was going in for checkups and different other procedures to reduce eye pressure, all kinds of things. So what that did, it, you were the one that edited the episodes and put those all together.
Right.
And my role was to round up the guests, and I would kind of create the list of questions that you and I might ask the host as kind of a guideline for us to work from. But I wasn't able to spend time doing that. I wasn't able to reach out and not only line up the guests, but follow up with them and, put that template together. And we were still doing the Tower Topics podcast, the podcast, by Kings Island fans for Kings Island fans. We were still doing that, but Attraction Group podcast very much was guest reliant it had become.
Mm-hmm.
And Tower Topics is more of us just being fans talking to fans, about Kings Island. So it was something I could still do with the eye issue. And that's kind of what, kind of derailed us a little bit in terms of getting the Attractions Group published every week, an episode dropping every week like it had been. And the subscribers have been accustomed to.
Yeah. And make no mistake as well. It's kind of a blessing in disguise. It's nice for us to consolidate. Tower Topics has taken off in a manner in which we never imagined it.
No, it kind of coincided with all of this happening too. I mean, it just happened all at the same time where we weren't able to round up the guests for the reasons that I explained, and then Tower Topics just takes off.
Yeah, Tower Topics took off. We're gonna do stuff under the Tower Topics umbrella with other parks, other chains, stuff like that. And more to come on that. But we're here in this setting for a reason, and that's because the Attractions Group podcast is not dead. It's going to live on, and we found some fantastic new hosts that will take the reins from us. So I want to introduce everybody to, first of all, let's welcome David. So David has been on the Attractions Group podcast 3 or 4 times through various means, and he's the proprietor of the company that is the Attractions Group. So welcome, David, to the show. And then new to the industry is Mr. Cleet out of Central Florida. How are you guys doing?
Doing good.
Doing great down here, yes.
Perfect. Awesome. So
how's the weather there in Central Florida right now?
It was literally 76 degrees today. Could not have asked for it to be much nicer.
It was literally in the 30s here today.
It snowed.
Did it really? How about that?
Yeah, how about that? Yeah, so David has mingled in the industry for quite a long time. Cleet is a college student. Let me start off. I'm going to ask both of you a question, and then because this is kind of a get to know you session for the audience. But let's start with you, Cleet. So you aspire to be in the entertainment and hospitality business, from what I'm gathering. What draws you to it?
Above all else, it is the happiness of the people that you get to work with. I've been, a little bit around theme parks for my whole life. First, just as a kid walking around Planet Snoopy, and and then now in a work role in two different parks. And there's something so special about seeing people get off of Mystic Timbers, so excited because they just got to see the tree or whatever it may be. So, when I was a little younger, what drew me to it was airtime hills and lateral G's and so forth. But these days, more and more, it's just how excited people are to be at parks, and it is an energy I feel like I really feed off of.
What about you, David? What draws you to the industry?
It all goes back to childhood too. Uh, Going to maybe back in the day it was a county fair and seeing all the lights, the bright lights, and the movement, and the people screaming, the people having fun, and that was something that just grew up. And back in the day, growing up north of Dayton, Ohio, Kings Island was a go to place, and got to say I was petrified to ride most of that. So it was, you're spending a lot of money to go to a park and not ride anything, but just the energy and the excitement, and people are going there to have a good time. I mean, no one's going there like because they have to. They're going there because they want to, and that's just the energy that it pulls, and it literally is a fun industry to be involved in.
Absolutely. What about you, Don? What questions do you have for the new hosts?
Well, as you take over the Attraction Group podcast, I think, a little history with when we first started that, it was something that Ryan and I were using as a way for people that were interested in getting involved with the industry, kind of behind the scenes look at different things, whether it's technology, mobile, different ways to do marketing and PR and that. And then the opportunity became available for us early summer of 2023 to begin having guests from other parks on the show, and it kind of evolved from there. And then we had the new segment and everything. But for both of you, I think you're both from you kind of have the same kind of perspectives that Ryan and I had with your backgrounds and that you were fans of the park. One of you is working for parks, the other one's working, behind the scenes on other things with the park. So I think it's kind of a natural transition to have you two hosting the show.
It's a great dynamic. I'm looking forward to it. I think Cleet brings a lot of interesting background to it, not just necessarily from liking having fun at the parks and then working at the parks, but also just he's got a very curious demeanor about him that I think is going to bring a lot of insight to not just the podcast itself, but the guests that come on the podcast.
Exactly. Curiosity is always a good thing to have.
So to you, David, what kind of, I think this might be an interesting thing for us to share about each other as we, get to know everyone. What kind of is your history working with in and around the industry? What has been some of your roles and even being the proprietor for the Attractions Group? Can you talk a little bit about what the company does and what it wants to do moving forward?
Okay, well, the Attractions Group actually began. Well, let me go back a little further. I started in the industry back in 2011, I believe. Working for a company here in Cincinnati that their claim to fame was, well, with the industry anyway, they had contracted with Paramount Parks, which became Cedar Fair later in the time. Actually, yeah, they were Cedar Fair by the time I worked there, but they were a legacy Paramount Park company, and their large claim was they brought to the industry the Fun Perks program. If you remember that back in, I think it was, Don, what was that, 12?
Around 2012 range, yes.
Okay. And my role to come on with them was to roll that out to other parks. I believe the parks is going to be rolled out to was Carowinds, Knott's, and maybe one other one for the following season, then roll out beyond that. And around that time, Cedar Fair had hired a new chief marketing officer, and among other things, and it's just the way that the professionally things worked out. I believe in this might be accurate, that a lot of the individual parks in the chain had their own agency relationships that they worked with, and Kings Island was one of those that had a number of different agency relationships, and then Carowinds had their own, and then Dominion had their own. And when she came on board, I believe that she had said that this is very inefficient the way that we're doing business here. We need to consolidate these into uh, just a handful of agencies across the spectrum. And by the way, all the agencies need to be able to do the disciplines for all, I believe it was 17 parks at the time. And the place that I worked for, not that they didn't do big things, but it was a smaller staff. And we certainly couldn't handle 17 parks. I think we had three to five, I think, somewhere in the neighborhood. Couldn't handle 17 parks. So our contract with a number of other disciplines that we did with those 3 parks was canceled, and along with it went Fun Perks. And so that never came out. And then out of that, we tried to take Fun Perks to other locations, some of the big ones. I won't get into the names of them, but we had come down and interviewed a number of different companies that wanted to bring it on. And we signed a non-disclosure, non-compete with one of the organizations that ended up later in that year started getting into some trouble with some negative press. And one by one, the people that we were working with started going away, started leaving. Another one started leaving, and about near the end of the year, thinking this probably isn't going to turn out well. And I had kind of went on my way sometime mid-fall, and around sometime December that year, they officially said, "Yeah, we're dropping the program." So that left me in with the bug planted in me to want to work in the industry, and had gone out and started doing some contract work with a couple different smaller organizations, family entertainment centers, and doing some website development. Had a turnkey marketing agency that did some of those, and then I was doing some contract work for the Beachwater Park. Fast forward to 2015, and in the office one day at the Beachwater Park, in walks Ryan. And out of that, I don't think we'd known each other before that. And out
No,
of that,
we
we just
had
had
talked on LinkedIn, but I don't think we'd ever met in person.
okay. And I think your first words to me were, "You're going to find out anyway someday," or I don't know what it was, but and that's how it started. And he and I have had a rapport ever since, and had this crazy idea to start a company that did, I think it was loyalty programs for
Yes.
smaller parks, family entertainment centers, and that was called Amusements and Attractions LLC.
Mm.
And in one way or another, we did some small projects, and ended up coming across a company in Northern Kentucky that did interactive technologies, and we linked up with them, got a couple things rolling, and got an installation at a large park operator in Florida, and then the pandemic hit. And I had a company before called the Office Group, and when things were emerging from the pandemic, Ryan had wanted to move on to other things, because when a pandemic's here and you're doing interactive technologies and you're not supposed to touch anything for 2 years, doesn't go too well. So
No
Ryan went
regret.
on to other things, and like an idiot, I stuck along and did things and tried to do with the industry. Took the Office Group, kind of cut that down. Took Amusements and Attractions, kind of cut that down and merged them together to form the Attractions Group. Took one name from both of them, and that's how I came up with the name of the company. And sometime about emerging from the pandemic, Ryan and Don, or maybe just Ryan, or maybe just Don, I forget who brought it to me, said, "Hey, do you mind if we do a podcast and use the logo and the name?" And I thought, sure, I don't, no problem with me. And I think you said 113 episodes. I think I've been on 3 or 4 of them, maybe. Usually, if I bring a guest to the table, I'd call third chair and kind of force myself in. But that's kind of the background. And since things are still emerging, working, doing different projects with different companies, and this is hopefully going to be another thing that we can get to other people with networking, and get maybe some usual guests and common guests and repeat guests.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, if you recall, David, the episodes that come to mind that you sat in on were we did one specifically with you about digital signage.
I do remember that.
I think you were our first ever guest. And then one time Don was under the weather. You and I recorded in your basement where you're sitting right now,
Yes.
and talked about loyalty programs. And then you claimed third chair on when we had Eric Bischoff, WWE Hall of Famer Eric Bischoff, and Joel Manby, former CEO, Hershen Family Entertainment, former CEO of SeaWorld Park and Entertainment, or whatever they're called now.
United Parks, is that?
Yeah,
United
United.
Parks.
Those are all talking like SeaWorld.
So, Cleet, why don't you tell us more about yourself? You've been so quiet over there.
All right. Well, so yeah, I mean, I really started it with the roller coaster world when I was in like 6 years old. I was in the car on the way home from school, and this radio station was doing a top 10 countdown of like song of the week, whatever. And I had, I was like, I might have been 4. I mean, I was very young, and I had never heard of a top 10. And so I got home, and I was really into top 10s, and I looked up on my computer top 10 roller coasters, and I saw this insane video that ranked Gemini at Cedar Point as the 6th best roller coaster in the world, having like El Toro at number 10. So that was a fascinating list, but it hooked me ever since then. And in the summer of 2019, I went to Kings Island 92 times that summer. Yeah, I grew up in Cincinnati, and in 2020, when Orion opened, I was up at Kennywood with some of my friends, and we drove back, and got dropped off at passenger pickup and waited out to ride Orion. We were the first public riders on Orion, in the front and second row. There were 4 of us, but they were doing the bleacher seating back then. At this point, I've ridden over 350 roller coasters in 20 states, been a huge fan for a long time. And then in 2022, I started working as a ride operator at the Vertigo, of course, at Kings Island. Had a great 2 years in Cincinnati doing that while I was in high school. Once I graduated, I moved down to Orlando, where I currently am working. I'm currently a cast member at the Magic Kingdom, and still learning and still trying to make people happy above all else.
Yeah, well, for the Attractions Group podcast, I mean, you're in the perfect market, for that. With everything that's going on in Orlando, I mean, that is like the mecca where you want to be for a podcast like this.
Absolutely, it's so exciting, and it's so fascinating to just see the year-roundness of it all down here. It is February right now, and it's one of the busiest weeks of the year because of all of the cheer competitions and so forth that come through this time of year. And it's like, if you're not usually being on some sort of a break or being involved in those cheer competitions, and you're not living in Orlando, it's not something you'd think about, but it's been just remarkable to see the way that it really is so nonstop between, the many different entertainment centers down here.
So, without further ado, why don't you two tell us what your plans are? How are you going to form this podcast moving forward? What's your vision for it?
You want to go, Cleet, or you want me to start?
Yeah, sure. So I think what one thing David and I really agree about and are really excited about is we want this to be pretty focused on the guests that we're going to bring on. So we have some experience between us, and we're very excited and passionate to be here. But I think the way this is going to be valuable for people is by bringing in people who really live this, who really have been in the industry for a long time, and to get perspective of what they do, but also how they started and what their path looked like for other people who may want to do it, or just for curious middle managers and theme park employees across the country. So I think the guest that we're going to be able to bring on is going to sort of be, if we're doing our jobs correctly, the focus of the show.
And I want you to elaborate on something, Cleet, because when I I think it was back in November. I don't remember exactly what month it was when I knew Ryan and Don were going to focus energies on tower topics, and thought, well, if the attractions group is going hostless, we can maybe do something with it. And you had said you and I had struck up a conversation in the line for Rock and Roller Coaster, wasn't it? At
It
the
was,
Hollywood
yes.
Studios. And at that time, I was sort of looking for anyone who I thought would make an interesting presence for hosting or co-hosting capacity. And I was going through the old adages of who is an industry professional that maybe in Orlando they work for an agency or they work for some other type of vendor, that someone that would have a lot of insight, a lot of knowledge, and possibly have a lot of connections also. But tell me this, give the story that you told me about when you go to the parks and you strike up conversations.
So
'Cause that's what really sold it for me.
yeah, okay. So we were yeah talking about something, and I'm not really sure what it even was, but um, I had some reason to mention this family I interacted with who told me that their favorite reason to come to Walt Disney World was um, the allergen friendliness of the parks, and I had told David about this in the context of, and I was like, so I do this a lot where I'll just go to parks and I'll get off work and then I'll just go to Universal and I won't ride anything. I just walk around and I kind of see people who are taking a break, maybe go up and start talking to them, and I ask them about their trip, and I ask them about what theme park line that you waited in this trip did feel the fastest, what line was moving the quickest, and whatever it may be. And I've got a variety of notebooks full of the answers to these questions, but I don't know. It's just it's so interesting to me, and it's more than perhaps even being interesting. It's just so um, easy to feed off of the energy of these people while they're talking about the fun that they had with their families, or maybe the bad times that they had with some of the parks policies or whatever it may be. But I love to just get in line. One of my favorite ways to do it is to ride the Skyliner at Disney World, because they put other people with you and then they're stuck there, so you could you can ask away and they can't go anywhere. That's right.
And just to climb into the mindset of what the average guest is thinking, how to improve, that gives you insight, because you're getting up in the industry, and whether you're a park reader or you're a ride operator, to know what the average guest is thinking about as they come in. That's valuable insight that I think, whether it's a park management or a vendor management, that it's good insight for them to know. And not everybody is as outgoing as you that can strike up that conversation in a trapped Skyliner ride or cart.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think many people are a little bit annoyed, but oh well.
No, people like their favorite topic is themselves, and people like talking about themselves.
That's right.
And I got to
Well, Cleve,
remember
we
next time
we
I
know
go
how.
to. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say we know how David feels about this subject privately, and I'm not going to
Oh,
embarrass you by
jeez.
making you say it on the air. But Cleet,
Maybe I will.
are you for or against Figment?
Oh, extraordinarily for Figment.
Correct.
You're correct. I like, Josh Gad said recently Disney needs to make a whole new attraction based on Figment, and there's nothing I could agree with more than that.
I prefer the DVC lounge above it. Isn't the DVC lounge is above Figment, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I prefer that one. You go there for the refreshments.
I don't know. There's something about the One Single Spark Imagination song that just, wow, you're just so happy to be alive.
That's Sherman Brothers. That's classic.
Absolutely.
Don, are you for or against Figment? I don't think we've ever discussed this.
We've never discussed it, but definitely for.
I dig it.
Also correct.
I like the acoustic version of One Little Spark that they play after Luminous.
Oh, Luminous is so. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been
I'm
on the
not
weeds
saying it's as good as Illumination, because it's really, really not, but at least it's worthy of that lagoon.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a tall ask to be worthy of the lagoon.
Hmm.
So, with I guess I'll ask all three of you. What is, if you were to pick out one of the most memorable times you had in any park, what would it be?
That's a
Don't all
tough
speak.
one because there's been so many, at the different parks.
I'd have to say the first time I walked up to El Toro, and El Toro is a wonderful ride. It was um, maybe it was on a big trip I was on, one of my first coaster trips. I hit my 100 and my 150 on the same trip, and El Toro was maybe Park 3 as we made our way from Cincy to Boston, basically, and seeing El Toro in I don't know, there was something so surreal about the scale and everything, and there was I don't know, it wasn't anything crazy to as a story to tell, but maybe the happiest I've ever been right there was seeing El Toro for the first time.
Well, you're still
Maybe for
young.
me, riding the Beast for the first time because there was so much hype about it in
Was that
1979
on
on
day
social
one?
media. Yeah, no, not on day one. No, it was later in the summer. But I think maybe that would be one of those memorable because it seemed like yesterday still when I rode that, but there had never been anything like that. Still hasn't been anything built like that in my opinion when it comes to wood coasters. So that one really stands out. I think the original Texas Giant. The first time I rode that, it was a night ride in 1990. I think that really stands out too. Um, that was one of those rides, when you came back in the station, everybody in the train was, what just happened? It was that good when it first opened. So those are kind of things that really, stand out. My first ride on the Voyage at Holiday World is another one that, very memorable with that. But it just there's something almost every time I go. It doesn't matter what park it is. There's something that stands out that was, memorable from that day. It might not even be a roller coaster. It might have been a show that I watched. Um, might have been some food, that I had. So there's all kinds of things that, come to mind with that. So to just really signal out one, that'd be hard to do.
Ryan, how about you?
Mm, I don't know. As far as like one day that stood out, the first time I ever got to do like a Beast tour, which was Beast Buzz 2004, which is probably before Cleet was born. Um, so that was pretty memorable for me. But the other thing that was like more of a precise memory is the Robbie Knievel jump at Kings Island in 2008,
Yeah.
Memorial Day 2008. That was both of those days are up there as far like my favorite theme park visits. You know.
What about you?
Oh, but after I asked the question, I kind of realized that people that go to parks on a very often occasion, it's kind of a ridiculous question trying to narrow it down to one. I would say two. Two of them really like in the second place would be anytime you go to a park and you go on the roller coaster for the first time and you get those surprise elements that you didn't know were coming. And I gotta say, Hagrid's at the Universal. That was probably one of the. There are so many elements in that I had no idea was coming. Where they go in that tunnel and all of a sudden the track drops 15 feet. Had no idea it was coming. But anytime you go on something for the first time, it is a great park experience. The other, I'm blessed to have two daughters, both in their teenage years now. But it's been about 10. I don't know what year it was, but going to the Magic Kingdom for the first time. And the castle is something our girls have only seen on TV. Never really seen it before. We've been to the Disney property before that, but we never went into the parks. And we were one of those where it costs so much to go in that the one's too young. We're going to hold off until she can remember it. And so the first time that we went there, I'm going to guess it was probably 2012, somewhere in the neighborhood. Go into the park for the very first time, and as you're around the corner, you can't really see when you go into the park. You can't see the castle just yet, It's going to come around the corner. And my oldest daughter, uh, she knew that when we were around the corner, you're going to see the castle. But at this point, she hadn't really seen it yet, and I was so fortunate to have the camera rolling on her the first time she saw the castle. And it comes around the corner, and it was just one of those reactions that did not disappoint. And then with the other thing with Magic Kingdom is they have the extra magic hours when you stay in one of the resort hotels, and I have a picture of the clock before we got ready to go to the buses and get back to the resort. We were there at after 2 o'clock in the morning, and of course, our youngest daughter does not sleep. The girl doesn't understand how to sleep, and at that time, she was probably, I don't know, 5, somewhere in that neighborhood. It's 1:30, and we're dragging, and we're trying to figure out how we're going to last another 30 minutes. The girls don't want to leave yet, and this girl just comes out of nowhere. Yeah, we're getting ready to go to the Buzz Lightyear ride, where you shoot the whatever in the ride, and just as awake as she could possibly be, goes, "I'm rootin' tootin' ready for shooting," and we're like,
Great.
the exit's over here. We could be leaving now. And of course, as soon as we got on the bus, they're both out, and we have to carry them in the room. But yeah, those are surprise elements, and then just being able to watch the reactions of the girls when they or kids, I guess, when they experience something for the first time.
Yeah, I remember the first time we took my daughter to Walt Disney World and she saw the castle. She was 4 at the time, but yeah, I mean, those are just things that just priceless with those memories and the expressions and the photos and everything that we still have from that.
Creating memories worth repeating. I believe that's something that Joel Manby had said when we had when he was a guest on the podcast.
That was one of my favorite guests. You talk about a guy I could talk with all day. But yeah, I mean, I guess it comes down to a lot of the theme, and Don and I have discussed this at length across our many platforms, I suppose now. But it's not about the rides, it's not about the shows. It's a lot of times it's about the memories created, and I think that's a perfect example because the memory that you kind of anecdotally told us about wasn't about like we saw the castle and it was so tall and it was so neat. It was like my daughter's eyes lit up, and that's what this is all about. It's not about the physical stuff. It's about the intangibles.
Yeah. Michael Graham from the Gravity Group. I went to IAPA a couple of years ago, and I stopped by the booth and talked to him because I knew him a little bit from before. And he was he told me some words I will never forget, and I put them on my college application essay too. I don't even know if he would remember saying this, but he said everyone in every industry, in some sense, is doing what they're doing to try to make people happy. If you're a librarian, you're trying to give people a good book so that they leave the library happy. If you're a cook, you're trying to give them good food. If you're a DMV worker, you're trying to get them their new driver's license, whatever it is. But he said, the entertainment industry isn't shy about it. That's the difference. We're not shy about what we're really trying to do. And I think about that all the time. And man, it gets me excited.
So before we wrap it up here, why don't you guys tell us more about the future of the podcast? Are you going to change the format? Any future episodes you guys have planned, anything like that?
I think the format will be mostly the same. You can kind of know what to expect from the previous Attractions Group episodes. Once again, very guest focused, but we'll be discussing news, and as things get announced in the industry, we'll be talking all about that for sure. You'll still, anywhere you've been listening to the podcast, you'll be able to listen to it in that same place. So you won't have to do anything new if you had a routine or anything like that. David, you want to talk about any of the maybe potential guests we have coming on, or should we keep people
possibly? I mean, we have a number of people that we reached out to, and we have some confirmations of people that want to be on, but we don't have dates locked down for them yet. So we may announce guests as the days come up. I know that we have we have a couple coming up in March, but I'll say those for maybe next week or the next episode. But like you said, that it's going to be mostly a carryover from what has been, and I think we're just going to modify things over time as we observe things that might be in our blind spot, as it gets some feedback from people who have listened, and maybe even requests of people who would want to be on the show, or requests of people that listen to the show that want to hear insight from somebody.
Yeah,
But we talked about. Go ahead.
What you're saying right there is such a big deal. If there's anything about this that does change, it will be because it's what you guys want it to be, and we want to make people happy in some sense, right? So if there's ideas you guys would like to see us do, we want to do those.
I'm looking forward to the day that we have the Tower Topics guys on.
They never appear on third-party podcasts.
Oh, touche. So now before we go here, before we lock this down for the end of the episode, tell us more about Tower Topics and how things are going with that. And I know you guys had a big meetup this past weekend, and I think that meetups are things that you guys want to start getting into more often. I might be speaking on turn on that, but tell us a little bit about where you see that journey taking you guys.
Well, I mean, we drop 3 episodes a week, which is pretty aggressive. Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays. The meetups, and we want to do more of those. The one we just had at Scene 75 in Dayton was very well received. Big thank you to everyone that came out for that. But it was kind of a way for us to kind of take a page on what Coaster Stock was all about when I was doing that it was about camaraderie and building a community. And that's what we're trying to do with Tower Topics, is just build a community of Kings Island fans. And, now after this meetup, some of the individuals that met for the first time there, if they see each other at Kings Island, they'll, say hello, maybe they'll hang out, ride rides together. Those are the kind of things that are going to evolve from that. But we look forward to just, continuing what we've been doing. We've got some guests lined up that I think everyone's going to be excited to hear from, that have some kind of tie in to Kings Island's history. So I think that's something that everyone can look forward to.
Yeah, check it out. If you're a Kings Island fan, then that's the direction you want to go. But if you want to stick around with the entire industry and get some interesting insights from some interesting dudes, then Attractions Group Podcast is the place to be. Make sure you follow them on X, by the way, at attractions_GRP.
Yeah, and I think, if you've been a fan of the Attraction Group Podcast, you listen to David and Cleet here, that I think they're going to be able to take it to a level that Ryan and I, wouldn't have got it to. Just they're well connected. They'll be able to get a lot of fantastic guests on the show.
I hope so. You guys have given us a great platform to build from. I mean, we're not starting from scratch, which is great. And for people to also know that they also, for the next couple months anyway, until some subscriptions run out, we'll be sharing the same platform. So we bump into each other on occasion. Mm-hmm. But it's a great platform that you guys have built, and a great foundation. And we look forward to building on what you guys have started.
Perfect. I'm glad you guys can carry the torch. I really am. I didn't want the name to die or the show to die or anything. And I'm confident it's in good hands. So I guess this dispels any rumor. We don't have to get in front of any rumor that you guys took the name away from us or we rage quit or anything like that.
No, very smooth transition here.
Maybe we should have just left that part out, that it was peaceful, and just let the rumor mill run. That would have been fun.
I know people would have listened just for the sake of getting the dirt.
Controversy creates cash, right? Is that the
wise man once said? All right, guys. Well, let's wrap this up. Thanks for taking it over, everybody. Make sure you check out David and Cleet, the Attractions Group Podcast. So link in the description for all your subscription needs. There's an audio version and so on. We'll see you out there.